Was I racially insensitive? Was I naive, maybe? 12 years ago. I want to revisit this. I'm excited to do so because anytime I do and ask me anything on Instagram, and if you're on Instagram and you want to follow me, it's Bert Show Bert. I get this probably once every round. And the question is, would you handle the Hayden, my son, situation with Muhammad Ali today the same way you did 12 years ago? And back then, I have friends that are blacks that I ran this by also. So it wasn't completely naive, and I wasn't just asking my white friends how they felt about it. But we didn't have as many black people on the show back then to give input. And now we do. So I would really like to get the input from Mo and from Amber and from Katie on this incident that happened in my personal life that I brought to the radio. And it was one of the most controversial things that we had talked about on. Were you here at the time? Mm-hmm. You were. Okay. Do you remember what your attitude was about it back then?
I don't. I really don't.
So this was
I think I was like, don't do it, if I remember correctly. But it was hard to. If I remember correctly, I believe my stance was you shouldn't do it. But if you had Muhammad Ali's blessing, then who am I to tell you what you should or should not do?
Which I did.
Yeah.
It's kind of a long story, and I'll try to truncate it here just in the interest of time, but I don't want to leave anything major out of it because it is such a sensitive issue, right? So when my son was 10 years old, he was assigned from his school a project that I thought was fantastic. The school assigned a project in which all the kids had to come in and be wax figures of a famous American. And he had a list of Americans to choose from. Now, in my house, he heard the name Muhammad Ali over and over and over again because it's one of the Americans, a boxer, that really bonded my dad and I as I was growing up, and we just didn't have a lot of that time. So as I got older and I learned that Muhammad Ali was way more than a boxer, I guess I must have talked to Hayden about it a whole bunch of different times, and somewhere in the back of his head, he found Muhammad Ali interesting also. So out of this whole list, all these Americans, he chose Muhammad Ali. Now, the assignment was a wax museum. So the parents would walk into this big room, right? And all of the famous Americans, would be there represented by the children, by the kids. And they would dress as these figures, and they would represent these figures, and then they would have their name underneath them so we could have some dialogue. So at 10 years old, my son had the idea to put brown makeup on his face to represent Muhammad Ali. So immediately I was like, oh boy, how do I explain this one here, right? So we did a deep dive into quote unquote blackface, and I told him why it was so offensive and how it would be controversial if he dressed up like Muhammad Ali and he had this brown makeup on his face. We talked about it quite a bit. And we talked about how demeaning it was, what really it was all about, how it was insulting, how it was to keep an entire race and make fun of black people also. And he said to me, again, at 10 years old, not really educated in this area at all, he's like, but I'm not doing that at all. And I said, I understand that, but you sort of have to just listen in a case like this, that when black people say that this is offensive, you just got to kind of listen. And we did more and more deep diving on the whole thing. And I think it might have been his words that were when he said, Muhammad Ali is not a famous American because he was a boxer. He was a famous American because he was black and he fought for civil rights and gave up his career and his life to stand up for what he believed in. He went to jail. He did not want to go and represent the country in a war that didn't feel like this country was protecting him. So why should he protect them? There were also some religious aspects to it also when it came to Islam. So we both sort of decided that him being there and not representing the thing that makes Muhammad Ali and a great American partially is his skin color. So if you have other 10 years olds that walk in there and then they walk out and they don't know that Muhammad Ali was black, then we've done a disservice to Muhammad Ali. There were some that were saying that you just could have put like some kind of piece of paper that said, I am black. That would have been maybe covered it and maybe not. So he went ahead and he did it. I approved it and he did it. And it was so controversial. We had people calling the radio station saying they were never going to listen again. I had people hitting me up. They found my email address and said that they were going to go to his school and they were going to protest at his school if he did this. It was a really big deal. Anyway, he went ahead and he did it.
And you had Muhammad Ali's blessing.
Afterwards. Was
it after the fact?
It was afterwards. So that's a very long story also. But we have sort of a mutual friend. And Muhammad Ali and his wife just happened to be in town. And we were lucky enough to go to Muhammad Ali and present exactly what happened. And also Hayden got to read his paper on Muhammad Ali to Muhammad Ali, which, by the way, that paper now is in the Muhammad Ali Museum in Louisville. It's still there, right? And Muhammad Ali and his wife totally signed off on it and said they didn't really understand what the controversy was about. And just as a sidebar, Muhammad couldn't really speak all that well at that time. There was just something magical about that man and his wife, man. And you could feel it when we were in that hotel room. You could just feel the magic and the love from that guy. He was embracing my kids. Hollis was there also, embraced Hayden, listened to Hayden as he was telling and reading his story with such intent and loving eyes. And then he came and he gave Hayden this big hug that I got a picture of also. And it's one of the greatest memories for me and my children. So, as I said, at the time, it was very controversial. And now looking back at it 12 years ago, I started to wonder, like, if you guys were on the show, would my attitude have been different taking your input? So now I'll stand back and I'll listen to you guys. Was it insensitive to do, or was it the right thing to do for history?
I can't speak for all black people, but I believe that if not all, most feel as if it's certainly insensitive to the culture. Because when you understand the history, respectfully, a white person's intentions of using blackface are irrelevant because it takes back to a time of minstrel shows, which if you're not familiar, you can Google that and it'll tell you what blackface is and where it originates from. And they used blackface in order to distinguish the differences between free blacks and enslaved blacks. And they made fun of our features, and that was their way of basically talking about us, talking down to us, and dehumanizing us. And it reminds us of a time when we were day to day dehumanized and treated as if we were less than. And that's why most black people, when we see it, we feel like it's very insensitive to remind us of that.
Mm-hmm.
I would have told you don't do it. Because for that reason, like Mo said, no, there's other ways that it could have been conveyed who Muhammad Ali is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boxing gloves, the pants, what are they called? Whatever.
He had all that, the trunks and the robe and the gloves and everything.
Yeah. He didn't need to do the whole, the makeup part. You could still convey it and still honor Muhammad Ali without doing it.
I am on the side of what Kristen always says, like intent versus impact. And I feel like that goes for many subjects. And I'm on the side with Mo and Katie. Mm-hmm. I would have also said, do not do this. Not just obviously for the black community, as Mo elegantly explains, but also for the welfare of your son and your family. The things that you did put up with because of the thing that you did could have completely been sidestepped had it not been done, and wouldn't have been an issue at all. But I would always, when it comes to that particular topic, err on the side of caution, because you do not want to upset people in that type of way. Racism is a very niche subject, so you have to be very careful about. I would have said don't do it.
Super interesting. So now I'm going to place the blame on my black friends that advised me back then to go ahead and do it. Because they all had said...
That's a classic white man move right there. Just call it as I see it, man.
I really didn't want to go into it totally naive, so I did ask him, like, I'm going to call them a cabinet of friends about it. And they had all hands down, and maybe they were too close to it. Maybe they know me and know what my intent was when others didn't, said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I've had the same feeling that you guys have, and that's why I've avoided it so long. Anytime I get the question, I kind of cringe about it because I think now, even without you guys' input, I think I would have probably made this decision now is like, nah, dude, there's other ways that we can do it.
I wish I could have a conversation with your black friends that said it was okay.
I want to know who
I really do.
I need a list of names.
They're still alive.
You can't even have the
You can.
Praise them.
The Bert Show.